What is up, everyone? It is Thursday. It is the 27th. It's late at night right now, and this is the morning grind. I'm not Stevie. Stevie is currently out, as you know. I'll be back again eventually, but I'm Grant Neiffer. I'm going to be taking over today, riding solo, because guess what? It's a 3-game slate. It's an interesting one. Not a great slate, but there's money to be made, and we're gonna break things down. We'll just go ahead and go right into things, starting off with the Mets going up against the Nationals. We got Senga going up against Gray. We'll start off with Gray here, going up against the Nationals here, or going up against the Mets here. Not a good matchup here. Potential weather issues, could rain. Again, check with Kevin Roth, see what's going on, but 93-degree weather. 60-mile-an-hour wind blowing out to dead center pretty much. So really, really good hitting conditions, not great pitching conditions here. So it's an interesting spot. Gray is in play at 6.6K, 3-game slate. Yes, but I really don't love it. It's really a bad matchup going up against the Mets. Mets are currently 27th in the league in terms of strikeouts versus righties. Above average WRC plus, above average walks. So really not a great spot. Add in the potential weather delay. It's not great, but realistically, there's not a ton of great options. A lot of tough spots for the other good pitchers. With weather, if weather's fine, he's in play. Is he my favorite? No, I think the two clear favorites are pretty clear. Mets do have the highest implied team total. I'm probably staying away from Gray. And then on the other side, Senga, if he's good to go, or if the weather holds up, rather, not a high strikeout matchup. In fact, a very low strikeout matchup, but not very patient hitters. One of the lowest strikeout rates in the league, also a low walk rate. We know that Senga struggles with walks, sitting over an 11% walk rate on the season. The strikeout stuff has absolutely been there. Even in a tough strikeout matchup, they're not going to be working the count as much. They're not going to be walking as much. So overall, the ceiling is still there in comparison to everyone else on the slate. Cease, the other high strikeout rate guy, really not a good matchup going up against Cleveland either. So it's a tough spot. Senga probably grades out as the top raw points play on the slate, but with the weather potential here, it could be a spot where you stay away. I'd wait and see where ownership is at and then kind of go from there. As for the Nationals pitching, if weather does look like it's going to be okay, and Senga does look like he's going to be heavily owned in this spot here, I don't hate a National stack. I mean, Lane Thomas has been great this year. Candelario has been really solid going up against righties. A stack could be in order. Again, Senga does walk a ton of bats. So this could be a spot here where he could potentially end up getting a lot of guys on base, giving up a bomb. Again, 93-degree weather. Wind blowing out, pitcher-friendly ballpark, but with these weather conditions, it's very hitter-friendly. So don't mind that. Anyone else you want to throw in, go ahead. I mean, not a ton to love in this lineup. Outside of the top 3, maybe 4 bats, you don't have to do a full stack. You can go mini stack, but 3 bats I'd be targeting: Thomas, Adams, Candelario. And then over on the Mets side of things, I like their bats. I actually took Alonso and Alvarez both to hit a home run today. Decent odds. Again, Gray, while he hasn't given up a ton of bombs so far this season, still over the course of his career, sitting right around 2 home runs per 9. Granted, he's at 1.2 so far this season. Still, guy that can give up some bombs. Great hitting weather. I really like taking Mets one-offs here. Alonso and Alvarez are my 2 favorite. Don't mind Nimmo. Don't mind Pham. Don't mind Lindor. Don't mind any of the power guys in this lineup. But that's mostly what I'm going for, is power guys. Although a full stack is in play, 5.5 team total. If you want to get a little bit risky with the weather, and Roth says it is a little risky, I don't mind that in tournaments, especially on a 3-game slate. Moving on to the next game, we got Chicago going up against St. Louis. Steele going up against Mikolas. We'll start it off with Steele. I know that the Cardinals have underperformed this season. Steele has overperformed. He's been fantastic, though. Great ground ball pitcher. Strikeouts, a little bit above average, sitting at 22% on the season. Doesn't walk a ton of guys, but he's going to be going up against a lot of righties. K rate versus righties, saying 21% compared to 26% almost. A lot of guys with big power. Weather is going to be very good over in St. Louis. I think it's going to be sitting right around mid-90s in this spot, so great hitting environment. Fortunately for Steele, Cardinals don't get the ball up in the air. Unfortunately for him, very good hitters going up against lefties. So Steele is probably number 2 on raw points. There's 3 very clear guys as the top guys, in my opinion. So Steele, solid pitching option. Don't love it, don't hate it, but it's a 3-game slate. And don't really love or hate anyone, but Steele probably ranks out as the number 2 raw points guy. Maybe number 3. Cubs on the other side going up against Mikolas. Mikolas, not a high strikeout rate guy. Cubs, not a terrible, not a great strikeout matchup overall, not a horrible lineup. 4.5 team total going up against him. He's fine. Again, literally every single pitcher is fine on this slate. No one really stands out. All depends on what bats you want. All depends on what bats you're playing. But again, it's going to be a tough weather game. I honestly might end up using both pitchers from the next game. But Mikolas, fine. Cubs bats, you're going up against a guy that gives up enough hard contact, enough fly balls, doesn't strike out guys, doesn't walk guys, gives up enough power. I'd target the power bats. I mean, Bellinger is the guy that immediately stands off the page. 5.6K may be a little bit too expensive. Hap at 3.4K, probably going to be a chalky option on this slate. Suzuki, not bad. Swanson, I like. Morel, depending on where he's batting in the lineup, 7th and 5.4K might be a little bit expensive. But stacks in play, power bats are in play. Everyone's kind of in play here. Again, good hitting weather. St. Louis side, I depending on ownership, is what I would end up doing with this. Because, again, going up against the lefty, I always love targeting lefties, or I love targeting St. Louis going up against lefties. Walker, O'Neill, Contreras, Arenado, Goldschmidt, Carlson probably leading off. 2.3K makes it work. These guys aren't very expensive. It's a stack. You can still fit in Senga or Cease or Bibby in there. All of them. All these bats are probably a little bit too cheap outside of Arenado and Goldschmidt. If you want to go different, you can always do a 3-man with Contreras, O'Neill, Walker, throw in Carlson there if you really want. You can take anyone as one-offs. I'm fine with any of that. Realistically, they probably are going to go a little bit lower owned than the Mets. Probably going to be the second highest owned stack. I still think they're fine to go with. Last game, we got Cleveland going up against the White Sox. We'll start off here with Bibby. He's been good this season. He's been very good. Match versus the White Sox. The White Sox, decent strikeout lineup so far this year. Haven't been great. Underperformed, obviously. Robert's been fantastic, but outside of that, not as great. I like him. He's probably the top point per dollar play on the entire slate. 7.2K, probably a little bit too cheap. I think he could end up being my number 1 owned option. All depends on the weather. All depends on lineup construction. But he's overall a very solid option. On the other side, Cease, second highest K rate on the slate, but gets a really tough matchup for strikeouts. Cleveland, one of the lowest strikeout rate teams in the entire league. Overall, not a great offense, not a terrible offense. The weather, decent here today. Going to be high 70s, low 80s most likely. Just a tough spot here for any upside, especially considering he strikes out lefties at a much lower clip than righties. He's going to be facing 7 of them. If he's going to come in low owned, I'll play him, but otherwise I'm probably going to avoid him, as he's probably 4th on my list of guys on this slate, of pitchers on the slate. If I had to rank them, Bibby's probably number 1, Senga's number 2, Steele is number 3. As for the Cleveland bats, I really like J Ram in this spot. Cease giving up a lot of hard contact. Not a ton of fly balls, but decent fly balls. J Ram just had 2 home runs yesterday, I believe, maybe 1, I can't remember. But solid. He's better from the left side of the plate. I actually bet him to hit home run today, saying plus 450. But overall, he's probably the main guy. And then you can throw on any of the other guys with power, throw in a full stack if you want. But J-Ram is likely my top target. Unless Chicago is, or unless the White Sox rather, are going to be heavily owned, or very low owned, I'm going to stay away from them. Robert, always in play. Eloy, always in play. Don't really love anything outside of that. Baby's been good. I don't see a ton of runs being scored here. They do have the second lowest team total on the slate. Maybe third. I think actually technically Cleveland is second, but this game's pretty close to pick 'em. I think that I'd probably rather stay away. If I'm ranking my stacks on this slate, it's probably Mets, and then probably the Cardinals, followed by the Cubs, and then this game, and then Washington. But yeah, that's pretty much the slate here. It's a quick one. It's late at night. I'm exhausted. I've been working for the last 8 hours. So I'll give you some free bets if you want, and then we'll get on out of here. 3 bets that I took today. Steele under 5.5 strikeouts. Already talked about the Cardinals. Cardinals, very good hitting team versus lefties. I know they've been underperforming this year. This line's just a bit too high. Josiah Gray under 15.5 outs, minus 120. Gray has hit this line at about a 50% clip, but potential rain delay, really hot weather, wind blowing out, high humidity. Everything is great for hitting here. Mets, low strikeout team, know how to work the count, decent walks, above average hitting. I'm rolling with the under. And then Shohei Ohtani, over 1.5 walks, minus 104. Ohtani has hit the over at this number at a massive clip this season, sitting over a 10% walk rate. This is in the earlier games. So if you're watching early, you can throw it in if you want. Does get a good matchup going up against Detroit, but Detroit does have some bats that can walk at a decent clip. Some patient bats here. 8.5% walk rate in their projected lineup. So I'm rolling with it. But that's it. That's the morning grind. It's been fun. We'll be back again tomorrow. It's going to be TJ, I think. I'm out of here. Later, kids.